Okay, now that we've got the thimbles made, what we want to do is clean up the ends, and I want to trim the tabs back a little bit too, and I'll show you why we do that in just a minute. First of all, if it's rough or irregular on the ends from cut work, just file it off nice and smooth. Again, making sure you're perpendicular to the shaft. And the next thing I want to do is cut these tabs back a little bit. Just trim them with a saw, and you can see that it's just right beyond the edge there. I don't want to actually cut into the circle of metal, just behind that a little bit, and take off about 1/4 of an inch of the length. And the next step is to stick your mandrel back in there with it held nice and tight, and hammer those two ends together there a little bit. And then file, trim that nice and smooth. Trim that again. And now when you look at the end of this, you'll see that it's a much smoother circle. It almost no joint showing whatsoever. That's what you want, so it doesn't look like it's made out of sheet. Even though that's the part that's down in the channel of the ramrod groove, you're still going to see that from time to time, and you want it looking nice. That's all it is to it. So I'll do both ends, and then we'll scribe this and show you how you can file these up. Alright, so let me finish the other end of this one. Now what I'll also do at this point is chamfer the edge of it just lightly with the file, and to remove any burrs from filing, go in with a countersink, give it a light chamfer inside. So now we've got both ends cut, and you can see the nice clean circles at both ends. Now at this point, to file this, I have basically a fancy little tool that I've made up. Nothing terribly exciting about it, but it's just a piece of rod that's got a cup on each end. Now, I made these cups from a piece of seamless tubing and brazed a washer onto each end, and then trimmed it down a little bit. And I put one on there, and in this case I've also got a piece of tubing inside to sort of center the thimble as I slide it on this end, and the ends that I've cut now will actually fit into that tube. And I'll fit a tube on the other end, a little tight. So now I've got this piece held in there, and with a wing nut on the far end. Now what these tubes do is they're set a certain depth, and that's the depth that I'm going to actually file to when I do the octagonal parts. So now I've got an end at each without having to measure. And the nice thing is too, if I use a pillar file like this one that has a safe edge on both sides, filing across, it'll hit the edge of that washer I've got in there, that tube, and stop. And that way I get a nice clean cut side to side. So to start off, you can hold it vertically so you know that the tab is straight down. Hold your file perpendicular to the face of the vise and start filing. Now the only trick now is, when do you stop? Well, you've got a certain thickness to the material, and you want generally to look octagonal. So if you want to draw lines on here to go to and all that, that's fine. What I find though works better is just simply file until it looks about right. And the only thing I'm judging right now is how parallel the sides of that file marker is. But you can see that you can't go but so far either way. That's the nice thing about this little jig. Now I've done enough of these, I know about when to quit. And you want to make sure that the ends of these are nice and flat. That's the good thing about these pillar files. You can get in there and really clean up those ends nicely. Now to do the next one, you can hold it in the vise this way if you want, but I find it's much easier to hold the tab in the vise so that it is level with the vise jaws, and work that way. And again, just file side to side. I'm trying to get my hand out the way there so you can see. And now you get your two side flats done this way. And it's pretty easy to judge now because you've got the flat of the vise here to help you guide your file. Now that's sort of a coarse file, and what I can do is come back in with a smooth file and smooth that out, and a wide file like this will flatten it out nicely. This will get it to the point where I'm ready to polish on it later. Now I'll flip it over, do the other side the same way. Alright, and then when we go to do the corners, simply turn this in the vise up to a 45. And I've got the flat here that I need to cut, and all I'll do is I'll just cut it until it's the equal width of these two. Now your first file mark across there will help you get it centered as to which way you're going this way. But again, the vise jaws make a real good mark to go by. And if you're not sure about how far to take it, you can go a little bit and a little bit, come back and do it. But basically at this point now, what I'm going to try and do is get rid of any rounded edges on both sides here. So I want to meet up to those other two flats. Go back in with a smooth file. And you can see that quickly we've already got the three flats filed. So I'll continue this on, do the other two flats again, and then I'll pull this out of the jig and show you what it looks like. So hang on. Alright, we got all that filed, and now we'll pull it out of the jig. Pull the ends off, and you can see what we got. Both ends will be equal, and at this point you can simply start polishing if you want just plain ends. And to polish this, I'll wrap a piece of 220 grit around the file and hold it on my mandrel and just start smoothing it off. Now I've got that little centerpiece I need to take out of there, so let me get a punch and draw that out. These thimbles were a little tighter than usual. That's why this isn't sliding out. And a lot of that has to do with thickness of the metal and how you folded it. But there we go. Nice and clean. And like I said, if you're ready to polish, you can just use a flat file, piece of paper wrapped around it, and just go from side to side. Then when you're ready, put it on the mandrel and do the ends there, side and quarter flat. But just file those up. Now if this is rotating too easily on you, do the same thing again as you did when you filed it. Just put it in the vise, holding by the tab, and you can smooth it that way. So there's different ways you can hold it. Now what I want to do now is I'll go ahead and smooth the ends around a little bit. And the easiest way to do that is hold it, mandrel again. And if your metal is smooth enough, no divots or dings in it, you can just polish it on around. Or if it needs a little more smoothing, just use your file, rotate as you file into it. That way you won't create any flats on the round section. And be careful not to tilt it one way or the other. If you tilt it to the inside, you're going to put nicks in your corners. So, after a little bit of polishing, that one's ready to go onto a gun. Now if you want to do something fancy on the ends, I've got a couple here we can look at. This is one here I made earlier, and you can see it's got a narrower tab on the end, a narrower band. So you can, if you want to, you can make different depths of these little cups to go on your filing jig that'll just cover just enough, and then just do a simple single band around there done with a 3-corner file. If you want to do something a little bit different with a raised edge, a lot of these you'll see with a bulbous area called an OG in there. And what you need to do then is scribe a couple of lines I set this to the width I want right on the edge. And this actually might have been easier to do before I did the file work on it, so I still had that dark surface to scratch on. One other trick you can do, if you've filed all this and you've polished the ends, and when you go to scribe lines on there, as your guide marks, and you really can't see them because the polished brass. Easiest thing to do, get you a Sharpie and just color the end of that tube, and that'll give you a nice dark base that when you go to scribe the lines, now they'll show up nice and clear. But I can see it now. And if you take a small file, I use a 3-corner file, and I don't get it so that it's directly up and down and the top is flat. I want actually this side here to be flat, so that it's going to actually cut sort of a V groove in there. And I'll guide it with my thumbnail to start with. And as I start cutting, I'm slowly rotating the thimble, following that guideline I put in there. And I'm keeping this side flat. I can look down it, see it. Excuse me. And you only have to go so far. Don't have to go all the way around because the bottom part's never going to be seen. And clean it up by rotating quickly with each stroke. Now if you look at it carefully, you'll see that it kind of starting that half of wedding band there that I want, with a sharp clean edge going straight down on the outside edge of it. So now I simply mark a line on the other side, same way, widen my caliper out, or my dividers I mean, and mark another line around the edge. And then I'll cut the same way. This time though, I'm going to make sure that the side facing me is perpendicular. And you've got to remember not to cut too deeply because you've got a very thin piece of material, and if you're not careful you can cut all the way through. Now when I go back over this, I'm going to start rotating the file a little bit to the inside so I can get a nice even roundness to that wedding band. I'll work it from both sides. Now, it might be a little hard to see, but if the camera will focus well on it, you can see I've got a nice wedding band running around there now. And again, all you have to do now to polish that up is put a piece of paper around that file you just used, the 3-corner one, and get in there and file those grooves to smooth them up a little bit. And if you got a buffing wheel, go over it lightly with the buffing wheel. If not, just use a little bit finer paper. You can go down to 600 grit and then hold a piece of steel wool on the end and rotate it like this, and that'll clean up all those file marks. Now I've only done 220 grit, so I would want to go a little more with the light grit to clean that up, but get the idea. And some people will just file 2 simple grooves on either end. I know a lot of the commercial ones are done that way. And the 19th century guns are done that way, where there's just one little file mark either side instead of creating that wedding band. And to do that, you just hold your file straight up and down with the edge so that the top is flat, so you're cutting an actual V groove into that edge, following a line you've scribed on there. So that's the simplest way to do those. And if you want to get really fancy with these things, you can take something like this, and I'll turn this so that it's a little bit of an angle, sort of in between the flats, so that this corner is sticking up. We'll get in here, and it's probably easier to do this when you got those guides on the ends, but I'll show you a quick way to make these things look really cool. I'm just going to file diamonds into the corners of the flats. Always try and use light strokes. Keeps it from chattering. And you don't need to cut off a lot all at once. This is the artistic part, so take it easy. You can see now we got diamonds filed in there. Now, if you want to, draw a line around the center so that you meet all the points up together. This one's a little bit short, but you get the idea. You can come up with different designs like that. On a longer thimbles, I'll make some that are better than 2 inches long, and I'll actually do a wedding band in the middle. And I've also seen some of these where sections are cut out to expose the ramrod in between these, and to do that all you're doing is filing or cutting away the top half of the thimble, leaving all this bottom in place. So that's that for that. Not terribly difficult. To do the entry thimble, it's basically the same way. Cut, trim, mark your ends, how deep you want to go, and you'll guess at this end how far you want to go in. Generally you can use the one you just filed as a pattern to go by to know how far down to make your last ring there and where to put the corners or the flats. And in this one you just hold on your mandrel and file away. Vertical first by holding it in the vise, turn it on the sides, file it, so on and so forth, same way. If you want to lay out what's called a thumbnail on the back end, you just scribe a line in an arc on the back, and then I use the pillar file again with safe edge. And all you do is use the edge of the file to sort of cut a groove and then feather that out towards the back a little bit. Go in and clean it up. You don't want a sharp step there between where you've recessed and the back of the tang, so you want to blend it all in. Anyway, that's pretty much how you do it. So you've got that little step, and you want it to sort of flow into the curve that you've got going on here. And then some people will do a double one where you just do another one, you know, a little bit further up, 3/16 of an inch or so, but you're bringing the same points down to where these points are. So you get the double thumbnail. Some schools use that a lot. Most people, though, just leave it plain. That's all you really need. I just wanted to add this note that when you're filing without some sort of stop, start your filing right at your mark. I put my thumbnail down, and of course this is a pillar file with the smooth edges again, and I'll dig in slightly right there at the edge, and that way you'll get it to the depth you want quicker, and you can just work your way across to the other side. And of course on that side you can do the same thing, just follow the guideline that you've scribed on there. So you don't have to have some sort of mechanical stop, just so long as you're starting so where you've got a step there, and with a safe edge you won't go past that. And as you work your way around, do the same thing, just use the line as your guide. So it's not difficult to do without some sort of special jig or device.